This is a very serious message, and we may take a humorous tone every now and then, but this is nonetheless a serious message, and we're not making fun of or jokes about any person or group because they are different. We're not saying that if you are different, therefore you are now the butt of our jokes, and now I'm going to make a joke about you because you're different, and I'm going to use this joke and these jokes to keep you different and keep you down, and then I'll get a laugh at your expense, and I will become more empowered and more advanced because of how I am using you to lift up myself. And we're not taking that approach here. That's not the approach we're taking. That's not what I'm doing. And hopefully that's not what you're doing. Friends, we're proclaiming the American way. And that is this: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that all men are created equal. And that every person that is now, whether you're an American or not, are created equal and are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, and these include the following. And you know the thing, but I'm going to say it anyways, the best I can recall: life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. And I might add, that has nothing to do with going to heaven, and that we haven't even got to the legal part yet. That's just the philosophy on which this is based. This is the starting point of America, right here. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. You have your facts, and I have mine. And they're the same facts. 1 is 1, and 2 is 2. And 3 plus 3 equals 2, plus 1, plus 1, plus 4, minus a certain amount, and then multiply and divide it, and so on and so forth. So, yes, you have your facts, and I have mine. Your side, my side. Your zip code, my zip code. Ours, theirs. And then there's ours, maybe. And that's where the borders come in. The borders are the lines, and they're imaginary lines as well as physical lines. And then you could put up a fence or a wall, a gate, barbed wire, electrified, machine guns if you wanted to use those, landmines, a dome over the top of your city or region or zip code or whatever it is that you want to protect, or you either want to keep people in, keep people from escaping, or you want to keep people out from coming in. And so here you have the scenario of, let's say, North Korea, where it's a very secure country. It's a very secured region, led by a very stable situation, in that this leader is in a stable situation. I'm not going to say if the leader is stable or not, I don't know. But I will say that, and as of the writing of this essay, and having this conversation, and this will be in the time we're talking. And I don't know, maybe you're just listening. I might be only listening. I might just be listening to myself. But we're talking about facts. I have my facts, you have yours. You have your facts, I have mine. And either one of us could say that. You could say it, or we might say it together to somebody else, and then they might say it back to us. And so here's where we see this. And again, getting back to the walls and the borders and the fences and the lines and the definitions and the meanings and the implications of all of these things. It starts with an idea, and then somebody's got to get together and talk about it, hopefully. and then it goes down on a piece of paper. It's put down somewhere as a document, as a reference, a foundational item that people can refer to and say, that is the thing that we're basing all of this on, and therefore we are that. And what we're going to do is we're going to add an IAN to that, or an AN, or an ON, or an ION, or whatever it is, and then we're going to be that, and we're going to embody that. And this is how we're going to do it. These are the rules. This is the law. And this is our book, our Bible, if you will. And as far as the North Koreans go, I don't know what their book is, their Bible, what their law looks like. I don't even know what it is that they're founded on, their principles that they're founded on. I guess an idea of communism, socialism, nationalism, capitalism, religionism. I don't even know if it's based on freedom or liberty. I would say no, but I'm on the outside looking in. The people of that country might say they feel safe. They might be very hungry and they might be scared, but they might say they're safe. And the leaders of that country might say the people of our country are safe and secure, and therefore they are happy. And if they're not, they need to be and they should be, and they're not allowed to leave. And nobody else is allowed to come in except with special permits. And then, of course, we'll lead them on a guided tour. And you can take pictures only of certain things in certain areas. And you have to stay in certain places at certain times. You're allowed to leave at certain times and go to certain areas. You must be escorted by these people or those. And you have all of these people that live under this dome, so to speak, of in walls, within walls. Based on something. And what is that thing? Well, I don't know. But it has to be based on an idea of a concept, a value, a principle, a goal, a direction. And this direction is guided by always this, the document, and then that's the law. And then these are the rules that hopefully everyone must follow. Now, North Korea, obviously the leader does not have to follow the same rules as the people that this leader in North Korea is ruling over. This leader is a very strong leader, so-called, by many people that don't live in North Korea. And again, the people there might feel very safe. That leader in North Korea might feel that he's doing a really good job. He might even feel called by God. And I don't even know if he professes to believe in a God. He might believe in a God. Maybe he doesn't express that God the way I do, or the way some people in my current zip code do, or region or nation where I'm living. But one thing for sure, he's a strong leader in that everybody around him does what he says, defers to him in a not only civil way, but a way that is visible and felt. They express this in such gestural ways, physically convulsing, either laughing or crying, and sometimes getting down on their hands and knees. And then you'll see other people around the globe, in other countries, and possibly where I live as well, looking at this and saying, well, this is crazy. How can these people who, they're sitting down and they're literally worshiping this guy that is literally bringing them into oppression more and more every day by the stories that they teach in their schools, the paintings that they hang on their walls, the recordings that they play through the speakers in all of the homes 24 hours a day. There is no escaping it. These people are being indoctrinated day in and day out, 24 hours a day, starting with their kids and then all the way up until the day they die. And they are fanatically, religiously, dare I say, zealously, and I don't know if it's sincerely or not, but at least it looks that way. It might be out of fear. But these people are dedicated to their leader. And there are pictures of this leader everywhere, all over the country, and in all of the homes where these people are supporters and loyal supporters of this ruler of theirs, this strong ruler, this strong man, if you will.
possibly anointed by God, and maybe in his own mind, and maybe in the minds of the people that support him. And maybe they support him out of fear, and maybe they support him because they really do believe he is their chosen leader by some higher power. Maybe he come down from the sun, or he came down from his father who came down from the gods. I don't know. But whatever it is, that's North Korea. I don't live there. But in North Korea, these people that claim to be loyal to this leader, I don't know if they truly are, but they claim to be, possibly out of fear. It seems as the whole country lives in fear. They're surrounded by walls. I don't know, but for me, that wouldn't exactly be my favorite scenario. They can't leave the country. Everyone must worship the leader. They are constantly inundated, deluged with noise that is constantly telling them about their dear leader and their masterful leader and what a wonderful leader they have. And no one ever stands up and says, hey, wait a minute, I have a different opinion about that, because they're going to take them and possibly kill them or throw them in jail, and including their family, if they try to escape, tell anybody else about how they feel. Never mind what's really going on, in my opinion, because I'm only looking at it from the outside in. I don't know what's going on over there. Even if I visited, and those that have to tell what they've seen with their own eyes, or as they have smuggled out cameras and videos and audio that they have been able to take unawares, and they have done they're acting as spies, risking their lives actually to bring us the truth about what's really going on with these people and how they worship this leader, and they actually seem to believe what they are saying and what they look like they're doing, and that is they are worshiping this man. Now, I don't know if any Christians are over there doing that. I do not know this. I assume there are. I don't know how truthfully out there, honest and open a Christian can be in North Korea. I think I know that you are not allowed to be a Christian in North Korea in the open, out in the open. I believe that the same goes for possibly being gay, Muslim, Jewish. I don't know what the whole scenario is there. But upon defecting, several people have gone over there, and then years later they are then now living in impoverished conditions and feeling excluded, marginalized. And it's not really a happy scenario. It doesn't have a happy ending for those that have turned back again to tell us what they experienced out there in North Korea. But you might say, well, you have your facts and we have ours. They have their facts and we have ours. Yeah, that's great, man. But a 1 is a 1 and a 2 is a 1 also if you take away one of those. So whatever, man. Divide it by another number. The square root of this equals that, and whatever. Look, here's what I'm saying, and this is what hopefully we're thinking about today. Everybody has a set of facts that go around in their head and how they think about everything. Some people think in terms of numbers broken down into separate integers. You have a series of ones. Other people think in terms of large numbers. You have one giant number. And here I'm going to break it down a little bit more, make it a little bit more challenging for you to stay on board here. And that is, if you take this and picture it as if everyone was on a ship, and everyone had a job to do on this ship to keep the ship afloat. And then somebody said, here, throw me a rope. I need that rope over here to do this. And then somebody else said, hey, man, you have your rope, I have mine. And everybody stopped what they were doing for maybe 1 or 2 reasons. Maybe they didn't like the way that somebody asked them for the rope or told them that they should get them the rope. Maybe they didn't call them by the right gender pronoun or whatever. Look, man, I'm talking about myself here first. But the fact is, we're living in a world where facts are facts, but also you have your facts, I have my facts. So how is that going to get us to the future? Well, this is how it's going to get us. This is how we're going to get ourselves to the future. Because we are not like North Korea. We do not worship a man. to lead us, one man, anointed by God as a king. And our leaders are not above the law in this country, in America. Now, I'm speaking to you as an American, and I'm also a Christian. Now, that means that, of course, I have thoughts and thinkings towards being an American, and also the same towards being a Christian. I'm also an Angels fan. I happen to marry into Dodgers household, so I'm an Angels fan by birth, and I'm a Dodgers fan by marriage. And you know what? We get along just fine. For a little while, at least, until the game comes on. But all joking aside, look, even though we disagree, we can still, at the end of the day, man, this is what America's all about. This is the American way. Now, I'm going to break it down for you in simple terms, and you know the thing. You don't need to memorize a set of documents. You don't need to position your body in a certain way, touch your body in a certain place while they're playing certain songs and certain combinations of musical notes at certain sporting activities and race car events, while you look up and bow your head to a multicolored piece of cloth. That really doesn't mean anything unless you make it mean something by doing something with it, about it, based on it, or for it. With a group of other people that think the same as you. And that is this: that all men are created equal. And I'm going to go ahead and use this language, that all people are created equal. I don't understand this term now, but all men are created equal, except to say that it means all people are created equal. And whether the founders intended it that way or not, that's how we as Americans intend it today. And then they wrote the Constitution, which is a set of rules based on this philosophy, this principle, this founding belief, if you will, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. And that, now you know the thing, but I'm going to say it anyways, if I can, from memory as best I can, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. And now listen, I'm going to explain this to you in very simple terms. I'm just going to say it. 3 items here. That these include, they're endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, which include the right to life, the right to liberty, and the right to the pursuit of happiness. Now, every now and then, you're going to have something that gets in the way of that. And when that happens, the people need to make a decision as to which direction they need to go. That's basically the crux of the matter with regard to and how the Declaration of Independence is springing forth from the minds of these great thinkers of their time, these great men of their time, I might add, who were also slave owners, and also one of them, I know for a fact, was a serial and I'm not even going to say that word, but he did that on a regular basis to slaves that he owned. And we know this is one of the founders, and they were all horrible people for our time, but in their time they were advanced thinkers, and if it weren't for them, we wouldn't have the advances in all manner of life that we now have, including that all people are created equal and can behave equally and live equally if they so choose. And it's not perfect yet, but the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, is based on that principle, that guiding principle, which is that all men are created equal, and that they're endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that these include the right to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. Now, every now and then, as they said, and we're repeating it now here, again, you have your facts, I have mine. Well, the one fact we all have is the Declaration of Independence, and the one fact we all have is the U.S. Constitution, based on this principle, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Yeah, and these include the right to life and the liberty and the pursuit of happiness. Yeah. And you have your facts and I have mine. But at the end of the day, this is not, look, man, not only at the end of the day, at the start of the day and at the end of the day, this is not North Korea. We do not have a king. No person is here, should be above the law. Now, again, we have a U.S. Constitution which is to be interpreted, lived according to, challenged by, resisted possibly, and changed by the citizenry, by the citizens. And the process for doing this is called an amendment. You can either have a constitutional amendment, and you can change that. The other way you can respond to the law is to take a law in a case to a court, to the court. And to you as the citizen will say, or I will say, this isn't right. We need to move in a direction on how this law was applied to me. The law is what it is. But now we need to look and see in a different way this law is being applied and how we're going to interpret it and how we're going to live according to it, even though the law says the same thing that is still said 230 or 50 or 70 years ago. You know the thing. It wasn't that long ago. Let's say 1776, maybe 250 years ago, roughly rounded to the nearest zero, let's say. Whatever. The point is you can change the Constitution, the law even. You can change the rules using the rules. And you do this through this process called constitutional amendment, of course. Now, the other way you can do this is you can actually I don't want to say bend the rules, you can interpret the rules to be applied in different cases in different ways, based on the time, even the location. Like a state may have a different interpretation of the law, and then a court there in the state might say, well, this is the way it is, and this is how it's going to be. And then the citizen says, or you might say, or I might say, yeah, but I didn't like that, and therefore I'm going to take it to another court, one a little bit above you, a little higher than you. And the citizen can keep taking this up higher and higher and higher. This is the reason why the citizen must have access to the courts. Absolute, there has to be some restrictions to it in terms of guidelines and parameters and process and ways to access. But a citizen should have unlimited access to the courts, at least equal access to the courts as any other citizen. All citizens need to have equal access to the courts. And then any citizen can take their case to the law, which will eventually end up at the Supreme Court if that's where it goes. If the Supreme Court will hear it. And then you have these federal courts and then the state Supreme Courts and the appellate courts and blah, 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 blah. And all of this only means anything if you've ever done it, or if you took a class on this, or if you needed to explain this to somebody, or if you're making an essay like we're making now and having this talk, just for conversation purposes, let's just throw this out there. A recent Supreme Court decision, maybe I liked it, maybe I didn't. I don't like a lot of Supreme Court decisions. But the reality is, when the Supreme Court makes a decision, that's the finality of how the law is to be interpreted in our land. So, while we have facts, I have mine, you have yours, the Supreme Court has the final say in this. So I may read the Constitution and I may say, wow, the Supreme Court says, or rather the U.S. Constitution says this, but the Supreme Court says that about this. And therefore, I didn't like what the Supreme Court said about this. They said that about this. Well, I like this, but I didn't like that. But I wanted this to say that, not like they said it. And then you wanted this to say this like they said it like that. And then so suddenly we find ourselves in disagreement, not on the fact of what the U.S. Constitution says. We don't agree on the decision that the Supreme Court made as to regarding how that law is to be interpreted, applied, and lived according to within the parameters of being a legal, or in other words, being an illegal. Because in our system, you are either living according to the U.S. Constitution and thus are in line, or you are outside of the parameters of the U.S. Constitution and you are out of line. But all of that goes down from the top, because you have this big document at the top, the U.S. Constitution, based on these principles, but this idea of the big one, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. And these include, and these are, the right to life, the right to liberty, and the right to the pursuit of happiness. And also, in America, we don't worship a ruler over here. We don't get down on our knees and worship a man or a woman, because America is not about one person. America is about a group of people, and growing into this principle, this goal that we have, that is that all men are created equal. We hold these truths to be self-evident. And then we created a law and a set of rules so that we could have a way to get to that ideal and stay intact as long as possible while we did it. And we're still doing it. And now here's my interpretation. Again, now I'm going to give you my interpretation of a scenario that we have now. And then I'm going to assume certain things about the scenario presented as facts. You decide if you agree with them or not. This is my opinion. And let's say that in the case of the Supreme Court making a certain decision that I didn't like or you didn't like, and that each of us had the opposite opinion from the other. That means I had a different opinion than you, and yours was different than mine regarding the same fact. That is how the Supreme Court interpreted a fact that we all agree on, something that the U.S. Constitution said. And this might have started way down somewhere as you went to go get your newspaper, and you tripped over the curb, and you said, man, you know what, we need to lower the height of these curbs. They're too tall, and I almost tripped, and then you start this thing, and then you go back to Schoolhouse Rock, I'm just a bill, and so on and so forth. But the big picture here is that the U.S. Constitution is our common and, dare I say, uniting document. And while that is our uniting document, the uniting principle and value that we all have as Americans and our guiding philosophy is, and we should live this way, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. And then, of course, we see that in the course of these events, blah, 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 and I'm not trying to downplay this, but I'm talking about this right now. The reason they wrote this was because these men said, hey, enough of this, and women, behind the scenes, of course, now we know this, but at the time we didn't see it all. But now we know a lot of women, a lot of men and women together doing this. And they came up with all these ideas, and these men wrote these ideas down. And they said, you know what? We need to have a way to make sure that this happens and goes along so that we don't end up having a king, but we have a lot of things in place here to keep everybody in check with each other. And the Supreme Court was one of these. And again, as I said, North Korea, their leader, is most certainly above the law. Their leader in North Korea does not, which is very safe by, I guess, outside standards. Nobody can get in. They got a lot of walls there and a lot of missiles pointing outward at other people. Also, nobody can leave, but everybody loves their leader. And I don't know what their Bible is or what their book is. I think it's all the noise that's piped in through the speakers in all the houses where all these people live, where they are hearing 24 hours a day about their great and dear leader and how wonderful their leader is. And again, we don't live there. We live here. Or rather, I live here. I'm an American. And if you're an American, this is for you. Look, if you disagree with something that the dear leader, the great leader, the wonderful leader says in North Korea, you are an outcast, a pariah, and possibly imprisoned. They will seek to destroy, decimate, and do away with any political opposition, as they would call it, or interfering with their national greatness. I'm boiling it down to simple terms, because they seem to be simple-minded thinkers over there with their leadership. The people are different. I am sure, I hope the people are. Again, the Christians, I'm talking about Christians too. I am a Christian, and I am thinking about Christians over there, what the condition of their life is and how I can support and help them as a fellow Christian. But I do not digress. That is part of it, but I digress. Getting back to this idea of facts, your facts, my facts, and our disagreement. Look, this all starts somewhere, and then it gets up into some national issue, and it's on TV, and everybody's on the internet, and that's a new feature of our time that George Washington didn't have. And then they were arguing with each other, and I'm putting myself right in this category. calling each other names, getting caught up in the color of people's skin, whether it's white, black, orange. These people, man, some people are obsessed with the color of somebody's skin. They're always going on about black skin, white skin, orange skin. They're always talking about orange people. And then there's other people, all they talk about is failure, failing. America's failing. This is the worst thing ever. These are the worst people we've ever had. These people are our enemies. These people are our enemies. These people are our enemies. These people hate us. These people hate us. These people want to destroy us. These people are coming to kill us. These people are invading us. These people are trying to replace us. Yeah. That is how people are talking in America right now on the internet. And I'm not talking about just any people, friends. I'm talking about Christians. Lord have mercy. Now, I'm going to say something directly to the Christians now, since I'm not only an American, but I'm a Christian. Come on, man, Christians, look up. You claim to be your Christian. You claim to be following the Lord Jesus Christ. So why don't you start acting like it? Look up, lift up your eyes to the heavens, see, and taste and see that the Lord is good. Yeah, and these Christians out there that are seeking an earthly ruler, all they need is just to get saved. And there, I said it. I'm only talking to Christians there. Anybody wants to hear it, there you did. And anybody else out there wants to get saved, you can do it too. Anybody that calls on the name of the Lord Jesus Christ will be saved. Okay, there you go. Let's go back to, now that's according to the King James Bible, if you believe that. If you don't believe that, forget about it. In fact, I would even say if you don't want to think about it, don't even worry about it. It doesn't even apply to you. But let's get back to this thing about America. In America, we have a system of rules based on a guiding principle, that is, that all men are created equal. And the set of rules is called the U.S. Constitution. And it doesn't matter what your religion is, or gender, sexual preference, or gender identity, in my opinion. Now, this may be interpreted in a completely different way according to the Supreme Court. I don't know, as the Supreme Court will interpret something and then tell the citizens how they are supposed to talk, think, and act. Well, you can't always tell a person, you can't always enforce how a person can think unless you change it at the level of the schools, which is what a lot of people want to do. So they would seek to change the political culture, the political setup, by changing the cultural setup, by changing the educational system. So they would begin to put books in schools very early, telling kids certain things that they want them to know by the time they are 16, 17, or 18, whatever. And then as adults, and they go on and hopefully become voters like their parents and their teachers wanted them to be. Now, that's how it works, I think. We saw this in every great advancement with education, and particularly, I would say, with Lyndon B. Johnson, who was a power-seeking human, of course, without a doubt. It's obvious. And the results of his presidency is what I want to get to. I don't want to get to the motivation because I know what the motivation was. He was a power-seeking human. But beyond that, I could not say what a person's motivation was or is. Hey, look, let's go in our current time. One of our most recent presidents, President Donald J. Trump, a lot of people said, well, he's a racist and he hates black people and blah, blah, blah. But, you know, there's no evidence of that. But I would say that what people are looking for is they want something to make sense. And when they're scared and when they're afraid, they want it to make sense. And so they say, well, this one guy at the top is a racist. Or this one guy at the top hates white people or hates orange people or whatever. They need to find somebody to blame because it needs to make sense. And then you get a lot of impassioned, inflamed, not only rhetoric, but action, where you have people shooting up marketplaces, schools, and then you also have people, Congress members, shall we say, I'm talking about Congress in particular, a lot of national legislators, again. They won't even talk to each other or take a picture in the same room with each other. and this isn't the only time it's been this way in America. It's been this way many times. There's been stuff that went on the floor of Congress, that, some people were almost killed on the floor of Congress, debating and standing firm on certain issues and ideas and values that they held dear. And then again, now here we move to our modern time again. You are looking now at the scenario that I'm looking at. And from this scenario, I've interpreted this, I have gathered this. America is convulsing right now. And when I say America, I mean Americans. People are scared. And I'm going to talk to people on every side of this thing as possible. It's not one side or the other. This is not a cube. It's not even a ball. It's not a sphere. It's just, it is what it is, man. It's a melting pot, if you want to look at it that way. But it's not a melting pot. It's like a bowl of soup where we all got a lot of try to get along, but the flavor from everybody else comes into everybody else. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but it's not that we're all melted into and become one another, but it's that the soup is better sometimes when you add certain flavors, and sometimes it's actually better if you take certain flavors away for certain people. And here I get into preferences and even racism. I don't mean to say that racism and bigotry is not preferred, and neither is it invited into our national operation. Now, it is part of the national discourse, but I will say to include people, and especially Americans, you have to include the racists and the bigots, and including the white supremacists, and also the people that are doing life in prison, and also the people that are doing another kind of prison term wherever. Maybe they're just living at home with their spouse and they're secretly gay or not. I don't know. But whatever it is, we live in the prisons of our own making often. And sometimes we have other people living in the prisons that we made for them because they didn't have the right test scores or whatever. We're not putting people in prison because they didn't have the right test scores. But what happens here is you have kids that, or when they're young, and they're not given the same opportunities as somebody that is another zip code, possibly, and they end up with fewer opportunities and with a more stressful environment that causes them to have a different view and more intensity of fear in their life. And so they go out and they do things that we would say are more desperate. But it doesn't excuse that as being okay. It's against the law. And I would dare say that in some cases it's against the law, but it's morally right. For instance, now I'm not going to say that it is okay to, or that you should go do this, but for a person to be so hungry and so desperate and so scared that they will go out and steal something to feed either a drug habit or food their kids with food, we've got a bigger problem here than just bad people stealing and people doing immoral things. There's people are in a lot of fear and they don't understand this, and so they start saying things like orange Cheeto and libtard, and they seek to trigger each other. We seek to see our political enemies decimated, and we look for the thumbnails that show our political opponents falling down off bicycles and falling on, stairways that lead up to airplanes, or walking with toilet paper on their shoe, and we make fun of the color of their skin. Come on, man. We're grown-ups here. The kids are supposed to be acting this way. Of course, that's why we have schools. Well, going back to Lyndon Johnson put, through his presidency, and I'm not saying he was a good man or not. I'm just saying that the work that he produced, in my opinion, made him a good person in my life. Because the results of many of the ideas and some of the approaches that he took and the people that he surrounded himself with, the words that he said, the people that he aligned himself with, and the goals that he set forth to try to achieve, most of them, I agree with. And I think, of course, he made a lot of mistakes, and he said he was going to make mistakes. And I'm not making excuses for somebody that lived and died, 60 years ago. But I am saying that you're going to get good and bad with every president that ever comes along, and the Supreme Court is there long after the presidents that appointed these people are gone. This isn't going to be changed, fixed, or solidified in a day. Well, it could come close to being solidified in a day. if somebody took the role of a dictator, for instance, for one day, which a lot of people do want. I don't want that, but a lot of people want it. And if you want something differently or different than I want it or differently than I want it, it can be changed at the Supreme Court level, possibly, or through the Constitution. And if it isn't, in the meantime, we don't have to kill each other. We don't have to hate each other. We can all get along to a certain extent. Remember the story I told you about how I was born into an Angels family and then I married into a Dodgers family? Well, we do get along on that, but we don't get along on a lot of other stuff. And believe me, sometimes it's hard to remember the stuff that actually keeps you together, because these other things make me so mad that this other person does while I am trying to do this other thing that I need to get done. And that's how it is in America. People want to raise their kids a certain way, and they feel that America should look a certain way, things should be a certain way. And when it doesn't turn out that way, or it looks like it's going in another direction for the next 70 years, which it did under Lyndon Johnson, and now under Trump, it looks like it's going to go in another direction. What direction that is, I don't know. But it's going in another direction. Some of us like that direction, some of us don't. I like some of that. I don't like a lot of it. I like a lot of it. I don't like some of it. You might feel the same way. I don't want to oversimplify it and say, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. But I will say this. Everybody's got a job to do. And if we start acting like Americans and instead of acting like religious zealots, and I'm using that word decidedly, and I choose that word carefully. I'm not talking about Christians, even though I am one, even though I am a Christian. I am saying the politics that we have in our country is vote, sure, and I do vote. And I don't tell anybody who I vote for. I made a mistake a couple of times of telling somebody who I voted for because I thought it would make an interesting conversation, but big mistake. Don't tell people how you vote unless it's your TV personality and you blah, 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 you want to argue and blah, blah, whatever. I don't want to argue. Look, man, nothing about that motivates me. Calling names, blaming people, sending people to watch people at the polls to make sure who's wearing certain color shirts at the polls. Look, Congress, you may disagree with the election results, and I may disagree with your take on the election results, whatever. But here we have the courts, and here we have the system that we have, and if I don't like it, let's do it as Americans. That's what I'm going to do. If you don't like it, let's do it as Americans. Hopefully that's what you'll do. And then we come together at this table with our main hat on that says, we hold these truths to be self-evident. And you know the thing, right? That all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. And that these rights, now listen, I'm going to tell you again, listen to me, the right to life, the right to liberty, and the right to the pursuit of happiness. And some people are going to say, well, this president took all that away, and this president gave it all back. And some people say, well, this president ensured that all people would have it, and then this president's taken it all away. Come on, man, that's great. And let's have that opinion, and let's have that talk. And I don't think that's a bad idea. We should have that talk at the kitchen table. But instead, we're watching this stuff on TV, on the internet. We're staring at our screens, our thumbnails, or our whatever it is we're looking at. And we're literally making our priority how and where people touch their bodies in certain locations, at certain sporting events, and the positioning of their bodies, and which church people go to, and who people want to marry, and which movies people are seeing, and which version of the Bible you're using, or whatever, or if you use a Bible, or if you believe in God or not, or which book you put your hand on when you were sworn in Congress, or what your last name is, or middle name. That's not the American way. But that is America. Now, that is America, but that the American way is that we are reaching for something higher, something up there that it's above us. And it looks like this. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. And you know the thing, but I'm going to repeat it. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And then I'm going to touch on this again. It's important. I'm not just trying to blow it all off, pass over it. But sometimes you have to do something different. That's what the founders said. I'm not saying that time is now. What I'm saying is, Americans, let's do this as Americans. Get up and go and vote. Now, a lot of people might laugh. They might laugh at me and say, well, you're so naive. You think voting is going to make a difference. Ha, 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 ha. Well, I didn't say that voting would make a difference. But every American, if you're an American, and I'm talking to Americans right now, Mr. and Mrs. American, Mr. and Mrs. America, I'm talking to you. And they and them American, America, I'm talking to you. Look, voting is showing up. Voting is doing the job. You can vote with your pocketbook, you can vote with a letter, you can vote at the ballot box. But this year, this time around, 2024, election 2024. And look, man, I'm gonna call it as I see it. This may not be the most important election in America's history, but is certainly the most important election in American history so far. Because we are Americans and we're building America. And when the founders laid the foundation, it was not complete. Even the founders theorized and said, even proclaimed, well, this isn't supposed to be going on like this for more than a couple of years. It needs to be changed every 10 years. So it's been going along, and so far everything looks good, but we have these tumultuous times. America is convulsing. Americans are convulsing. But it doesn't mean that we have to abandon ship. We're on the ship together. Throw me a line, whatever. I don't know that kind of a talk. I can only tell you this. You have your facts, I have mine. We have the Supreme Court. We have the ballot box. If you don't want to vote for any particular candidate, make your voice known in that direction for that effect and say, I am choosing not to show up. I am choosing to not vote. And you don't have to give a reason, and you don't have to tell anybody who you did vote for or didn't vote for, or whether or not you did vote, and you don't need to show yourself to anybody or think about anything other than that you are an American and that your job is to be a voter, thinking at all times as to how your behavior and your decisions make this country go in a certain direction. So vote on election day in some way and let it be known, at least to yourself, this is my decision. I am not going to sit down and just let America turn into whatever it's going to turn into. I'm going to build it. And I'm going to use my power as an American citizen to work with my neighbor to help America, to make America great again. So don't forget that, friends. We can make America great again at the ballot box by helping each other, by including each other. We don't have to hate each other. We don't have to make an enemy out of one another just because we had a different way of voting or thinking, just because our Congress member is a weirdo or not, or more than a weirdo. There's a lot of weirdos in Congress, trust me. And having run for Congress myself, obviously I didn't win. I can tell you that it's a tight club. It's a tight knit club. It's a closed door to a lot of people that want to get in. And in order to even hold a lot of citizen events, town halls, debates, where you invite a lot of these candidates, man, they have so many rules that you have to jump through to make sure that everybody's, and sometimes it's like because they're afraid of being realistic, of being real, being authentic. And they're really afraid of losing power. Many of them. But use that. Lyndon Johnson, a perfect example, power-seeking human. But used the power of the presidency to some good end, from my point of view. And same with, let's go with our modern day with Trump. In my point of view, used the power of the presidency to some effect that has turned out in a way that I'm not totally pleased with. Let me put it that way. And some of the stuff I absolutely just don't understand, and I'm confused about a lot of stuff. However, that doesn't mean I have to hate anybody that has a different opinion than me about Trump. And it hopefully doesn't mean that anybody has to hate me because I have a different opinion about them than that person, their candidate. And again, I didn't tell you who I'm voting for, who I'm not voting for. I didn't tell you if I am voting or not voting. It's none of your business. You might think, oh, I got to figure it out, man. This is where it's going to happen. And therefore, I either love him or hate him. Look, man, why don't you just grow up? Just grow up, man. Grow up into this person, an American. I'm not here to put anybody down. I don't want to own any liberals or conservatives. I don't care about that stuff. I'm a Christian also, and I use the King James Bible when I read the Bible and when I study the Bible. But that's not the book that I use to live as an American. The book that I use to live as a person is my own heart. And then I'm informed through all the other books that I read and live and encounter through the lives that I see and the people that I meet. And the Bible is one of those books that I've always used from the time I was a kid. And I love it for many reasons. There's a lot of stuff in the Bible that's good and a lot of stuff that's bad for a lot of reasons and a lot of people. But I would say this, the Declaration of Independence, now that's the founding principle of me being an American, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and that they're endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. And that, now listen, even though you know the thing, I'm going to say it again, right? That these, look, man, these include, I'm going to tell you what these rights are. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. If you can get your head around that, if you can get a hold of that with me, then let's go, brother. Let's go, sister. Rock and roll, baby. That's the American way right there. That we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. So at the end of the day, you have your facts, I have mine. I don't really care at the end of the day what the Supreme Court says, what the Constitution says, what the Bible says. Speaking only in those terms. I am going to treat you to the best of my ability as if you were created equal and that you are endowed by your Creator with certain inalienable rights, these are your rights, according to this thinking. The right to life, the right to liberty, and the right to the pursuit of happiness. And if you're on board with that, and you want to do that with me, let's roll. And if you're not, and you are an American, but you don't want to do that with me, I can only say I wish you the best, and I hope for the best for you and for your family and peace for all people on this earth. Well, I pray that prayer and wish that for you as well. And now, friends, that's all the time we have for today. We are speaking to Americans. We're thinking of our fellow Americans all around the globe, across the globe. And we want to acknowledge, I want to acknowledge this as a Christian, all of the Christians that are around the globe right now, doing the work of serving humanity in the name of Jesus Christ. And so, if you're able to, if you're so inclined, whether you are a Christian or not, but I'm speaking primarily to Christians, why don't you find something to do, some person to do this with, where you can lift up the name of the Lord Jesus Christ? And I'm speaking only to Christians here. I'll get back to Americans in just a second, if you're only an American. I'm not a Christian. Now, you might be a Muslim, a Jew, or a person of no faith, or this way or that way. I don't know. I'm limited to my knowledge. I haven't done a lot of traveling in my life, possibly 3 or 4 countries. But I do know there's a lot more religions out there and ways of looking at the world than mine. But I say this, the American way is still the best way, friends. And that's how I see it, that's how I call it. I want to make the American way everybody's way. But I'm not going to force it on anybody, not even fellow Americans. I'm going to use the rules and the system that the founders gave me. I'm going to use the U.S. Constitution. I'm going to use that as long as I can. Hopefully we can all use it. Together as Americans, we can act like adults and follow the rules. And you get all these Christians on TV, and here again I'm talking to Christians, and all they talk about is failure, failure, fail. And all the people hate us, and everyone's coming to attack us, and it's going to devolve into civil war. And they're all wearing American flags. And these are Christians. Yeah, and I'm not talking about all Christians, man. I'm just talking about these Christians. These Christians. I'm only talking about these. Not talking about all of them. Look, man, and if this is your thing, if you're this kind of a Christian and this is what you want, and your highest goal as being a Christian is to get somebody to vote in your way, win an election or whatever, so be it, man. Have at it, and I wish you the best for your life and family in health and peace and personal happiness. And as my Gammy once said, hey, as long as it's not illegal and you're not hurting anybody else, go for it. And hopefully, too, as long as it's not to you immoral, because you have to live by your own conscience. So, friends, that's all the time we have today. And we're not done talking about this, but we'll take it up every day. Every day, friends, we do this as Americans. We go out there and we make America great again by treating our neighbors as if they were us. And that's its golden rule right there. Whether you use the Bible or some other book, whatever, the golden rule is basically do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Lord have mercy. So if you're into that thing and you can find a way to translate that into American speak, American living, then as I have, through the Declaration of Independence and hopefully following the rules of the U.S. Constitution while my arms are interlocked with my fellow Americans. May God protect our troops. And may we walk in the right as the good Lord gives us the ability to see the right. Good night.